Hey Cat, you ready to do the vlog? Monsters University? Cat? Cat? Where is she? Really?
Oh, you're no fun.
Still doing that?
Nothing scare you?
Yeah, stuff scares me, just not this.
You know. Meh.
Ah!
Meh. Meanie. So yes, we are Crazy Crew and we saw Monsters University.
Wait a minute, we're missing someone.
Oh yeah, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, you weren't here last week, unfortunately. You missed this rather annoying person who spoke with this really weird accent and wore this very open shirt. You might know him as General Zod. Yeah, he kind of took over the review last time, and yeah, he didn't take too kindly to Eric punching him in the last film, so he kind of put him somewhere.
Where? That's harsh.
So yes, we saw Monsters University. I gotta say, I wasn't exactly looking forward to this one.
Me neither.
Yeah, because first of all, Monsters Inc. is not one of my favorite Pixar films. I mean,
Nor is it mine.
I mean, it's a well done film, but it's
just sort of eh.
like when you compare it to the likes of The Incredibles or Up or WALL-E or one of them, it really does lack in that department.
Don't get me wrong, it has, the characters are fun and, the situation, the story's passable and probably a little more so, but it just doesn't really leave you wanting more.
Yeah, because, first of all, Monsters Inc., well, yes, it was imaginative how they explained the whole monsters scaring kids out of the closet thing. I mean, it's technically been done before, so it's not like it was treading new ground or anything. It was interesting to see, how they perceived humans and everything, and how exactly they were able to, go in between the human world and the monster world. But in terms of, hitting, that, emotional center, in terms of, being able to identify with the characters, it was rather lacking. So with Monsters University, I was kind of, really scared. Because, I mean, first of all, this was the first prequel that Pixar has done. And it's kind of retreading a rather common theme that we've seen, in terms of college movies.
How Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
In fact, it's funny because isn't Billy Crystal in that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when Harry met Sully.
Yes, this movie follows a lot of cliches, with the wide-eyed optimist who wants to do this one thing with his life, even though he's not really equipped to do so, and is the underdog and has to really work his way up to the top in order to accomplish his dream. We've seen that. We've seen the whole college-like setting that has, your typical cliques and archetypes with, the asshole fraternity brothers, with the goth clique, with the sororities, and, the nerds and all that, and the underdogs. So we've seen all that. And then, of course, we have the typical friends that started off as enemies, but go through this whole big process where they become friends. So, all of that is present in this movie.
And yet, it's done well.
Mm-hmm.
I was somewhat surprised by this movie. I went into it with very low hopes, didn't expect to like it at all, but I did like it a little bit. In fact, I thought it was even better than the original Monsters, Inc.
I actually thought that too.
Yeah.
Like, here's the weird thing that this movie managed to accomplish. It took two characters that didn't really have strong defining personality traits, and the ones that they did have, they switched them. Like, for instance, in the original movie, Sully is the all-around nice guy that everybody loves, and Mike is sort of like, the back-talking, sort of like
The obnoxious
little side character who, quite honestly, I felt a lot of the time was like either always angry or always trying to piss somebody off. And they kind of switched that a bit in this movie. In this case, you're actually supposed to sympathize with Mike Wazowski. Like I said, I didn't really care for Mike in the first one because, again, he seemed really like a prick. In that, oh yeah, he's sided with the best scare ever. That gives him the right to, gloat and, talk down to people and generally act like a smug little shit. In this case, he's the underdog that we're made to associate with, in that he actually started off wanting to be a scarer. They even show the whole process of how he wanted to become a scarer. I mean, he has that initial, like how kids, whenever they are brought on a field trip somewhere and they're like loud, but they're like, I want to be this when I grow up. With this, you actually see it like really cemented into why he wants to be a scarer, and I thought that was pretty good.
Although the whole thing they like that gets him to want to be a scarer is that he got in without being seen. But that was because nobody was paying a lick of attention to him.
Right.
So.
Like, I mean, it's more that he was encouraged by someone he idolizes. So, and he got to see like firsthand just how scaring is done. So that's what really like drove him to want to, do what he, become a scarer. And you see that he actually has like the intelligence and the technique in order to pull it off. Like, you see him study hard, you see him work hard in order to, like, get where he is. And he's actually accepted, like, into the SCARE program, like, of course, as a freshman. Because, like, in a lot of those elite programs, they'll start you off with, just everybody who managed to get in, but then as time goes on and they test you, they gradually eliminate those that they know don't have the capability. And you can see that like their Scaring Institute definitely has a high standard.
Oh boy, does it ever!
Yeah, especially when you meet the dean of the program.
I forget what her name is.
I don't remember her either, but I definitely remember what she looks like.
She is freaking terrifying.
Like she looks like this strange sort of insectoid reptilian thing that's like kind of long and thin with sharp edges to her head. But then she has like these big ass bat wings, and then she has the long body and legs of a centipede.
And yet, as terrifying as she is, she's like the most elegant. She has like the most elegant features.
Yeah, she's like, she has a weird sort of class about her, and that, yes, she's definitely terrifying. You can see why she would be one of the great legends of scaring. But at the same time, she has like such a dignity about her that you can't help but like respect her, and that that she's good at what she does, and you can understand why she would hold everyone else to such a high standard. But I thought she was pretty cool. But of course, she kind of has to serve as the main antagonist. Again, another cliche in college films is that, you know, you have the bitter old dean who hates the students for whatever reason.
Well, actually, this film, she's not the only antagonist.
Right, she's not the only antagonist, but I think she's kind of made out to be the big antagonist. Because it's ultimately up to her on who stays in the program and who doesn't. So she holds a legit threat in terms of that. But at the same time, she's not hateful, she's not malicious towards students.
She's not out to get them, sort of speak.
She just happens...
But she is. It would make more sense if I, you know, could explain. It's like, she wants... after, you know, seeing what Mike and Sully are like, she pretty much wants a reason to kick them out. But she wants to be fair about it. She's not just going to, you know, up and tell them, well, I hate you, so get out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because one of the big centerpieces is, you know, again, Mike and Sully and how they make the transition from point A to point B. Like we explained with Mike, he is the underdog who wants badly to be a scarer and who knows, you know, all of the technical aspects of scaring.
But he is not scary.
Right, he's not scary. I mean, you've seen what he looks like. Would anybody genuinely be scared by that?
And then, in an odd sort of, you know, puzzle piece way, Sully is scary, but does not really have any techniques nailed down, nor does he show any interest in he just thinks, well, I'm naturally scary, so why do I need to learn this?
He's basically one of those characters that, you know, has a family legacy in that, you know, oh, because he has this last name, he's automatically going to be as great as his family name is. And he has that whole mentality about him. He's like, oh, I don't need to learn all this stuff. You know, I'm at Sullivan. I can easily just get through this with little to no effort. And you see once, like, they start testing them, they start going over different techniques of scaring, and, you know, how you have to really, like, have knowledge of the person you are scaring in order to, like, get the best response out of them. You see that he is completely lacking in that. And in ways like, when him and Mike become rivals, you actually believe that Mike might actually beat him based purely on that aspect of scaring. Because he has all the technical stuff just nailed down. So, like, I kind of compare it to, like, say two guys are on a football team. You have, obviously, this one guy who's, like, big and tall and strong and, you know, can throw a football, like, 500 feet or whatever. However, he trips over his own shoelaces in terms of trying to, like, walk around people, and he can't catch their shit. And then you have the other guy who, of course, knows all of the plays, and he knows how to, like, get in between guys. He knows how to, like, get the ball to where it needs to be.
But he can't physically do it.
Right. Yeah. He can't physically break the line. That's what I'd compare it to. So the whole movie at this point becomes about them not only trying to overcome their difficulties, but having to learn to work together to sort of complement each other to overcome that. Like, the big thing is, like we said, with when they confront the dean, is that they end up breaking a collectible of hers, like one of the only things left over from her days of scaring. Now, had this been any other typical college movie, it would have had her. It would have been
grounds for immediate expulsion.
Right.
Yeah.
But instead, being the smart monster that she is, she goes up to each of them
and puts them on the spot.
Right. And she tests them. So with Mike, she's like, okay, I'm a 5-year-old girl. I'm afraid of this and that. What do you use? And he's like, oh, yeah, you use this approach and use this type of scaring technique. He's like, okay, good.
Do it.
Demonstrate. And he doesn't even get to try. Like, he is about to, but she's like, nope, not going to work.
Done. Next.
Whereas with Sully, she's like, okay, so I'm a 5-year-old girl. He just fucking roars in her face, and he's like, I don't need to know that crap, you know, I'm scary enough. And he's like, well,
I didn't finish.
He's like, yeah, if you actually let me talk, you would have known it happens to be afraid of, you know, lions and stuff, and your response wouldn't have scared them, would have just made them cry. And thus alerting the parents and thus exposing yourself and the entire monster world. So, on those grounds, they both get kicked out of the program. Not expelled, just kicked out of the scare program, which is insulting enough given how one has worked extremely hard to get there, and the other one is trying
not really good at anything else.
Yeah. So then the only way for either of them to get back into the scare program at this point is to enter the scare games.
Yeah, they make Mike basically makes a deal with the dean. It's like, if we can win the scare games, you have to let us back into the program. But if she wins, they have to pack up their bags and leave the school.
Right, so it's one extreme or the other.
Yeah. But of course, now basically Sully blames Mike for getting kicked out of the scare program, and he's like furious with him. But at the same time, he knows that this is probably the only way that either of them is going to get back into the program. Mm-hmm. So he decides to swallow his pride and work with Mike, but they're still not done yet. Because in order for them to even compete in the scare games, they have to be part of a fraternity.
Right, so they joined Uzma Kappa, aka the nerdiest fraternity on campus.
AKA okay.
Yeah, and this kind of, again, falls into cliche with that you have, you know, the loser fraternity that, you know, are... The only reason they're a fraternity to begin with is because they're all losers that happen to, you know, get together and form their own group.
But on the other hand, they don't even really care about scaring. They all have their different interests that they're not even interested at all.
To me, that's like one of the weaker parts of the movie is the fact that this whole group gets dragged into this conflict, which is just between these three monsters. And they really have no stakes in it other than, hey, this could possibly make us not losers. Because, like, they do explain that they were all in the scare program at one point or another, but for obvious reasons, they lack the ability to pull it off. Like, you have this one guy whose name is Squishy. I mean, really? You're gonna be scared by someone named Squishy? So, so this turns from, you know, a character movie, an underdog movie, to a underdog group movie. So, in which not only do you have to turn this whole group of losers around and make them winners, but now you have to get these two monsters that each lack a significant component to scare and get them to work together. So, it keeps building up and building up.
And this is probably at the point where the movie actually starts to get good. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like prior to that, I mean, aside from, you know, the final exam for the scare program at the beginning, it's like the movie had not a lot of substance in it. It was just really trying to be funny. It was trying to be referencing of the first movie. You had some moments here and there that were interesting, but generally it's like up until the training for the scare games, I'm just like, this probably didn't need to be a movie. It could have just been shorts. But no, like, once we get into training for the scare games, it really starts to get clever. It really starts to... You start to get invested in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they have, like, what was it, like 4 or 5 rounds to go through? And, of course, you know, they start off with just barely getting into the first round.
In fact, they lost it.
Right.
They completely lost it, but because one of the other teams wound up being disqualified, they got to stay in.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the first round was completely based on luck, but it's like the starting stone to them eventually learning that, hey, despite our differences, we have to learn to work together. So, and some of the rounds are interesting because they actually do apply heavily to scaring. Like the first round was
they have to get past this one interests me heavily. It really makes me question. They have to get past a bunch of like koosh ball like looking objects.
They're like these little glowing urchins.
Yeah, but they can't touch them, and if they do, they puff up, they swell, and like
they have like a severe allergic reaction.
Which leads me to one. It's like, okay, so in the first movie, we pretty much established that humans are not at all, toxic. They can't make monsters sick unless, maybe the human was already sick. But in any case, no. It's like, so none of their objects would have any of that kind of effect on the monsters. So it led me to wonder why exactly these koosh ball things, if touched, would create such a reaction.
Well, the thing is, it leads to my theory in the first movie that long ago these monsters they did discover, that hey, scaring has the ability to power our entire city. However, we can't let the general populace know this, that they can easily go in and scare, because then that would drive profits away from us. So let's make up this whole myth that children are toxic and so is everything they touch. So that way we only get special personnel that we personally employ to go in and get the scares for us. I think it's that whole thing. So I'm pretty sure none of them actually knows what happens when you touch a child's toy. Because if they did, obviously they would see that it was not toxic. So I think they basically had a general idea of what would happen should they touch the child's toy. Hence why they thought, oh, let's just get these things that are non-lethal but will still cause a bad reaction if you touch it. And hey, it's fucking urchins. Those things hurt like a mother. So, yeah, that was the first round. And then the second round was they had to quietly sneak through a library in order to capture their flag and bring it back outside. Again, falling into the whole that monsters have to be quiet when first going in.
Well, really, the whole idea was that they had to get their flag without being caught by the librarian.
Right.
So, even if they made noise or anything, it didn't matter as long as the librarian didn't actually catch them.
Loophole.
Yeah.
That was a weird thing to me, because it's like the whole purpose of that exercise was that the monster needs to know to be quiet so they can slip in without the child noticing at first, thus getting that surprise reaction out of them, and thus not alerting the parents. But in this case, they actually managed to get through the round by distracting the librarian, who's 50 feet tall. You ever thought of an evil, had the vision of the evil librarian, this is it. And she, oh my god, they somehow managed to get away with just basically distracting her and just not getting caught by her. That was the whole thing. And I keep thinking, cool, well, if this was a human, then humans would obviously see that, hey, these monsters exist, and they would know of the world. So isn't that kind of a detriment? Isn't that, something that they should be striving to avoid? But they do make up for this in one of the other rounds, where they had to hide out in this replication of a house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
They could only scare the children. They couldn't scare the teenagers.
Well, that's another round.
Oh.
There was one round.
Oh, right. They have to hide in plain sight.
Right. There was there was one round where they had to hide in a replica of a house and they couldn't be caught by the refs. That was the whole big thing. And the second round was that they had to avoid teenagers, because apparently teenagers don't scare as well as children, and the same principle applies as if they got caught by an adult. So the whole point was to distinguish between teen and child, and it's actually kind of funny how they distinguished them, because they gave the fake teens all the stereotypical traits of teenagers. It's no one understands me.
I'm on the phone.
Daddy, I love him. I thought that was hilarious. And it's kind of weird that some of the monsters didn't make the distinction, because I mean, aren't they technically teenagers themselves? Because I mean, we've seen that their monsters really aren't that different from humans. I mean, they go to the same type college, they have the same type setting, the same cliques, the same, you know, programs and everything, minus, you know, scaring. So it stands to reason that they would know what teenagers act like. So I don't know.
But let's see. So then they come. I think they decide it, like, Uzumaki still sort of. They're not totally feeling it, and Mike decides to take them on a field trip to Monsters Incorporated,
which they managed to break in with not much difficulty.
Yeah. And he basically shows them why, you know, all these monsters are different. They don't really have as much fear. So they're sort of just like to show them that they're just like everybody else.
I think the point was they were to show that, you know, all of these monsters, they look different and they all have their different ways of scaring. Mm-hmm. And the whole point was that, you know, the Uzmas, while they did not look traditionally scary, they still had skills that they could use to become great scarers. Heck, they even show, like, this one professional scarer who was just a pink little puffball that at first looks cute, but then sprouts these big spider legs and then grows fangs. So. And
of course, it also provides a nice moment of character development with Sully and Mike, in how, like, both of them collect monster cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're talking, you know, stats.
Yeah, because up to this point, like, again, even though Sully had agreed to join the fraternity and, you know, be on the team, he still believes that he's a one-man show and doesn't need to know any of the techniques. The first time, like, of course, the team loses because not all of them managed to reach the finish line after avoiding the urchins. And then the second time, he completely goes against the entire team by trying to capture the flag in the library by himself, which almost got them caught. And then after that point, he realizes, hey, I've been a jerk about all this. You know, I've needlessly, you know, put my team at risk. Maybe I should actually start listening to you guys. Mm. And even Mike agrees that, hey, maybe I shouldn't have been so harsh on you. You know, maybe I should have been more open to
ideas
and, you know, like, teaching you what I know instead of just brushing you off as a rival.
And then there's also that nice moment when the authorities try to catch them. It has, like, I was mentioning this before, but the pink, like, furry monster, the pink purple furry monster, he's probably, like, the best character, because he just is like He's like a philosophy major, mm-hmm. and he's like a pacifist, and he's sort of a hippie.
Yeah.
But like the lights go on him, and they're like, freeze! It's like, I can't go back to
jail. He definitely has some of the best lines.
He does. He really is like the best character out of that.
Most memorable, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, they managed to go from like last place to like second place in the games, and are finally facing off against this rival fraternity, one that Sully had initially been part of at the beginning, but they
kicked him out when he failed. When he got kicked out of.
When he failed his scaring
program,
test.
Because they had this whole big thing about, we only accept the best.
I gotta admit, that is one thing I actually did like that was different, because usually in a lot of movies with fraternities, I mean, they always
stick together no matter what.
Yeah, that's the thing. They always portray the fraternities as like the assholes, you know, all the like the jerky students who either like, use their reputation and their family name to sort of, like, justify their actions and not having to really work at school, or they're just, like, these dumbasses who happen to be big party animals that everybody likes, so they just accept what they do with, like, you know, no consequence. In this case of the movie, they actually have the fraternity have a standard of saying, well, hey, yeah, we're the best fraternity, we're awesome as shit. However, we only accept the best ones, and we only accept those that have good grades, you know, to keep up our reputation. So you need to hold that standard, otherwise you're out. You don't have to be a big jock asshole on a football scholarship, you know, just to be a part of the fraternity.
Who has a name.
Right, who can just, you know, ride that throughout school and completely flunk out with, like, no consequence. So I actually like that. I just wish that the fraternity wasn't completely a stereotypical, like, asshole fraternity. And the funniest part was, like, they had Nathan Fillion voice the head guy.
It's funny, Nathan Fillion's been in, like, 2 movies that I saw, like, the same week.
I know. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of fun, and it's kind of believable, too, given his character in the Dr. Horrible movie. So yeah, Uzmas go up against the Roars, as fraternity's known as, and the whole big thing is to go in the scare simulators, the things that the scarers in the scare program had to do in order to pass the program.
And these things have, like, different settings on them.
Well, they're all set to, like, the hardest setting.
Yeah.
'Cause, like,
and they're like glued onto that setting, so to speak.
Right, because you have, like, different levels of scare. Like, you have certain kids that are afraid of nothing, and then certain kids that, you know, would, as soon as they hear a noise, start crying for mommy. So, those type of settings. So it's at the highest setting possible, and they all go in one at a time, each team, and try to outdo each other.
And they're all given, like, different,
they're given, like, different
kids,
folders
yeah.
with, like, the kid's profile, how old they are, what they're afraid of, and everything. They each go at it. Both sides have a relatively good chance. And then it comes to the case of Mike. Now, leading up to this, Sully had approached the dean and said that, you know, hey, if we win, I hope there's no, and are let back in, I hope there's no hard feelings between us. She proceeds to then put that seed of doubt in his mind, saying that, well, I'm pretty sure you're not going to win because the whole big point of tomorrow's round
being scary
is to, you know, be scary enough in order to, you know, get enough points for your team to win. And I happen to know the fact that one of you is not scary. And, of course, she talks about Mike. So Sully at first tries to get him to be a little more scary and not to be so by the book in terms of his scaring. But then, come the final event, Sully has it so that Mike goes last, telling him, oh, let's finish strong, since you're obviously the strongest scarer. So Mike goes last, goes up against the leader of the Roars, and even though, like, the guy gets a pretty high score, Mike is still able to completely outdo him with a record-breaking scare. Thus leading to the whole underdogs win. They're the best now. This is great. Happy endings all around.
But of course, we all know that Mike doesn't get a job as a scarer later on, so how did this happen?
Right. So, right as Mike is, like, you know, just, like, looking over his, you know...
I can't believe I did this.
Yeah, he's looking over the area because, you know, they're cleaning up, and he's, like, so happy and everything and saying, watch out, mechanical kid, Mike Wazowski is here to scare. Rawr! And the kid suddenly screams, and it's the same...
I know I was scary, but I didn't think I was that scary.
And he realizes that the settings have been changed for him to the lowest. Meaning, like, he even snaps his finger in front of the kid, and the kid screams like crazy. So... And given that Sully was the last person to have gone in before him, means that he was the one who changed the settings, believing that Mike did not have what it took to actually win on his own. So, of course, that whole scene is heartbreaking. Because, like, at first, Sully tries to be nice about it and saying, like, well, I just didn't want to, you know, I didn't want to risk it. I wanted to make sure we won, and then he goes to, well, it's not, why should we suffer because you don't have what it takes? So that causes Mike to become so angry and so determined to prove himself that he ends up breaking into one of the labs of
the door shop.
Yeah, because they actually have like a whole program where students learn how to build doors, the ones that actually the portal to the human world. And like that actually kind of fascinated me a bit, like how they managed to do that whole process.
I've been working on this door all semester.
Yeah, it's like apparently working on portals to the human world is a casual thing. Like you can do it in a college lab. Mm. It's like, why can't we do that in our college? Just casually build a portal to another dimension.
Well, I guess it's not so casual because they can't have just anybody, making doors. They have to train them to.
True, but I mean, they show them actually making them rather easily. Like, they even foreshadow it a bit at the beginning, where they show Mike on his tour of the college passing the lab, and you see these, like, students that are working in it, and they open the door, and that immediately leads to the room of a child. And I'm thinking, wow, like, it's that easy to make a portal? So, he breaks in, and using one of the doors goes into the human world.
And he winds up in a sleepaway camp filled with young girls.
Yeah, so, because he tries scaring one child and it doesn't work. He tries scaring the other children, still doesn't work.
Like, oh, how cute.
Yeah, so now Mike is trapped in the human world with dozens of human children. And meanwhile on the other side, all the monsters have barred off the door in the whole area, saying that, no one's allowed in, not until the authorities get here. So Sully, however, takes it upon himself to go in anyway. And he almost gets caught because they mistake him for a bear and chase him out into the woods. And it's kind of a tense scene because, it's not like when they were banished in the first movie, because at least then they were out in the middle of nowhere. Like, with this small little village, which you don't even see them, like, really sneak into. Like, you have that, and then, of course, them going in between the doors. Like, there was, like, no real threat there, because they strangely never run into a single human.
Well, I guess who would go out in freezing cold mountains when they're in the safety of their little...
Right, in this case, they're actually in a crowded camp full of people, so... And, of course, Sully, of course, sort of looking like a bear at a distance, like, that is a general threat. Even if they didn't touch him, they'd still shoot him to death. So, eventually, Sully meets up with Mike, and the two, have a scene where, Mike's like, you were right all along, I'm not scary at all, and Sully's like, I know how you feel. He's like, no you don't, you're born with all these privileges, and you're automatically scary by default, and I can't do anything, no matter how hard I work, So it comes down to that, and then realizing that, Sully telling him, well, I'm actually, terrified most of the time, and, I don't know any of that stuff that you know, so I'm actually a big joke, and it's a nice bonding moment between them. But then comes the big test of getting back to the monster world, because they managed to get back to the cabin,
but the door has been shut off.
Yeah. So...
they're trapped.
Yeah, and you're wondering how exactly do they get out of this, because they're not exactly near another home where they could easily sneak in and go through another door. Not that it would work anyway. And
here's where they put their dynamic to the test.
Mike believes that if they can generate enough scream power, they can actually power the door from the other side. However, the only ones they have to scare are a group of adult policemen. Now, these are people that are trained to go into dangerous situations.
But then again, they're probably terrified even then, they just never show it.
Right, but I mean, even then, regardless, law enforcement officers are hard to scare, given that this is what they're trained for. So you're wondering how exactly these two college level monsters pull that off. Well, like we said, that's where their dynamic finally comes into play. Mike sets up everything, generating the whole atmosphere, to be creepy. He has the windows. The window covers just wave in the wind. He has some scratch on the floor. He
walks on the ceiling to sort of create creaky effect.
Right. And then there's one point that kind of goes against sort of the law of their universe. They wind up a doll and make her walk out. And I'm thinking, wait, aren't kids' toys supposed to be toxic? How did they do that? Anyway, so they create enough of a creepy atmosphere where the cops are legitimately getting scared, and then they do the ultimate thing where Mike trips them over with fishnet, they get caught up, and then Sully just lets out a big ass roar.
And their scream.
It is so damn powerful. Not only does it power the door from the other side, but it fills up every single scream canister in that room and overpowers it to the max.
So Sully and Mike reemerge in a massive explosion that completely destroys the door lab.
And the dean is there and she's in shock that they managed to pull that off.
She can't even speak. She's just gaping.
Mm-hmm.
She's not pissed. She's just
what did I just witness? So yeah, they're apprehended by authorities because of course they were in the human world. They have to be decontaminated. Though strangely, they're not left bald, like poor George Henderson was in the first movie.
We actually see him in this movie.
Yeah, he's in one of the fraternities that ended up.
He doesn't speak, but he's in the background there. Yeah. But despite the fact that they did this great thing, despite the fact that Ooze Mackay is actually given great status, and all of the brothers are actually accepted into the scaring program because of their talents, it's not the same for Sully and Mike.
Nope, they are expelled. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They are just out. Sully was out to begin with because he had actually gone to the dean and revealed that he messed with the settings, hence how they won.
Which actually is kind of an interesting, one of those moments that I thought was they're gonna do the typical college thing, but instead it's the dean, instead of lavishing this, just reveling in her finally getting to expel these, she's actually upset that she has, that they cheated, and she's really disappointed in them.
Because, they set a record-breaking scare. They defied all expectations and managed to actually prove that they are scary, with the exception of Mike. So, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, it was totally an out of what you would expect moment.
Mm-hmm. I am glad, though, that even though Sully admitted to cheating, she didn't penalize the entire team for it, like any dean probably would in those stereotypical college movies. And they're the only two that do get punished. The others, she makes good on her word, and she lets all of them into the scare program, since they did prove that they can be scary using the special talents that they do have. So they're looking good, and I was actually glad too, because I'm thinking, they're fucking over this whole group that had nothing to do with the conflict in the first place. That's kind of messed up. But no, they actually end up better for it, which is ironic. So yeah, Mike and Sully have been expelled, and they're not really sure where to go from there, because, what exactly can you do upon being expelled? It's practically a period where, you're lost. But the dean shows up and says that, and it's a reference to something she said earlier, is that she's never surprised. She usually knows what to expect whenever she lays eyes on the students. Hence why she knew from the start that Mike would not be scary and that Sully would lack on the technical aspect of scaring. But in this case, she said that they actually did surprise her with being able to accomplish what they did in the cabin, and realizes that they do have a special dynamic that could get them far.
Even Sully realized it before she came in to tell them that, because he's begging Mike not to go because
he's nothing without him.
He's nothing. He knew that Mike. He pretty much said, I couldn't have accomplished this at all without you. Without you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a rather sweet moment.
So the dean ends up, she tells them that while it's sad that she has to let them go, she at least admits that she'll be a lot more open-minded now in the future when it comes to getting, like, monsters that she may initially think don't have it but could possibly have it. So, and she also gives them, like, kind of pushes them.
Yeah.
She gives them well wishes and kind of pushes them in a direction by giving them the newspaper she was reading, which has the ad on the back that says Monster Inc. is hiring in the mailroom.
Which is actually a reference to something earlier in the movie.
Yeah, because when they're getting picked on by the Roars, they keep saying, "Oh, tough luck. We know you're not going to make it in the scaring program, but hey, they're always hiring in the mailroom." And that's the funny thing, is that it ends up being a positive thing.
It ends up being a catalyst.
Mm-hmm. Because they actually do go work in the mailroom, and in fact, they get so good at it, they actually work their way up the ladder. Yeah, they become janitors, they become cafeteria workers, they become canister movers, and eventually they even try out for scaring, and they win and become automatic scarers, and end up becoming the top scarers in the program. So, I actually find that to be a good lesson. Like, it's a bit of a mixed message, that saying that you don't really need college to accomplish much. I mean, on the one hand, that does kind of, say that, college isn't important. And while I'm not saying that's completely true, because, an education is always a good thing to have.
We've seen that a lot of people have become completely successful and have either dropped out or not attended college at all.
Right, so it gives the message that you don't need to graduate from a fancy college in order to do something great in life. I mean, look at Bill Gates, look at Walt Disney. I mean...
Yeah, look, if you have a dream and the means to achieve it, then, hey, college may not even be for you.
Right.
You'd just be sort of wasting your time.
Right, and I'm not saying, don't go to college or anything. I'm just saying if you're not going to go to college, at least have a plan and have the means to back it up. Have the ambition and the skill.
But just remember, college is not the real world.
Right.
In fact, it's almost like a shelter from the real world. It tends to masquerade as getting you prepared for the real world, when in reality it does anything but.
And actually, in a weird sort of way, they show that, in a way, college can be the answer to a successful life, because one of the characters in the Uzma fraternity is actually an older guy who used to work in sales, but then got laid off when his job closed down. And the only option he saw for himself was to go back to college. And as a result of him going back to college, not only did he manage to get the education he never got, but he was in a fraternity that, won the scare games. He was accepted into the scare program, is now, a scare student, and he got engaged. So, if anything, this movie does a pretty good job providing a well-rounded argument on why college is and isn't necessary. Like, it depends on the person.
Exactly.
And, and shows that despite whatever negative experience you get in college, it at least gives you something to go off of.
So, moral of the story, I guess, is don't necessarily push someone to go to college, but don't discourage them either.
And it's also to show that, like, no matter how different you are, you still can achieve your dream in one way or another. You just have to figure out what it is that's special about you and make it work. And it's in that aspect that I think this works as a Pixar film. Because, like, I've seen critiques in, like, papers and online and stuff saying, oh, this is the worst Pixar film yet and stuff. And it's like, first of all, it's not as bad as Cars. Like, Cars.
And even Cars was enjoyable.
Right. Like, it wasn't like that, or even Cars 2. I mean, and like I said, this is actually better than the first movie because it focuses on character, and it focuses on character arc and development. And plus, actually giving you a moral and a good message, something that the original Monsters Inc. didn't. So, I definitely say this is, like, among the better Pixar stuff.
I've always said, Pixar has never made a bad film. Because even at their worst, they're still enjoyable. They may have their problems, they may not, be the best thing ever, but you could still always watch them and not feel like, oh, I just wasted so much time with that movie. It's like, no, I got a laugh. I got, I thought the characters were good. There's always something good about Pixar movies.
And like, even in terms of animation, like, I thought it was really creative with what they did with all the monsters, because it was very rare when some of the monsters, like, looked exactly the same. Like, usually it's when they were, like, grouped together, like that sorority, but they actually went out of their way to make a lot of the monsters look incredibly different from each other, and in varying degrees of, from scary to cute. So, I approve them for that. And of course, everything was, like, bright and colorful, and they made the campus look really big.
I'm not sure where it begins and where it ends.
Yeah, because, like, it stretches to infinity. Heck, they even have an underwater, like, building for the aquatic types, which I thought was cool. So it definitely was that. I would say, though, do not see this movie in 3D, because I saw it twice. First time regular, second time in 3D. And the 3D really doesn't add anything at all. Like, I thought it would make maybe the scare scenes a little scarier, and a little bit, because, you see, like, the shadow effects, which is, like, kind of unnerving. But other than that, like, 3D is really unnecessary when it comes to this movie, so don't waste your money. So overall, yes, I give Monsters University a definite thumbs up. I totally recommend seeing it.
I grade it with a A-.
Oh, I see. Now you give it an A-. Didn't you give it a B+ before? You're just copying me now. I'm telling the teacher. Ah! So yes, till next time, I'm Catsy Critic.
I'm One Sat Morn.
And... Is it better then?
Now let me put the setting back to easy.
Till next time.